with how we got here. Okay, so how we got here is they fought already this year. We were there, John. We watched it. We weren't there, but we were doing a live stream that night. UFC 257 back in January. Dustin Poirier getting the win over Conor McGregor as the underdog. Pretty shocking result. It was shocking to me because I didn't think Poirier would be able to knock out Conor McGregor. I figured if he was going to win and maybe a late submission like we've seen with Conor or maybe a decision, but the fact that he knocked him out, I think spoke volumes to where Dustin's at in his career and where Conor is at as well. So how we got here is, Poirier did not want to fight for the belt next. So he wanted the money fight. I don't blame him. He's been an interim champion. He wanted to go where the money is. This is your last opportunity to fight Conor McGregor, I would think, unless Conor wins and they do a fourth fight. I don't know. But I think in general, Poirier is looking at the big picture here, and the big picture is the big money. I don't have a problem with Poirier taking this fight. What are your thoughts on him, having this fight as opposed to fighting for a title?
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. It was a risk though. You know what I mean? It was a risk because next to the Conor McGregor fight, the only fight that you're going to make money in is a title fight, right? But if he misses out on that and Conor just decides to retire right before the fight, because you remember they did go back and forth on social media and he just said, oh, I'm out of the fight. I'm not even going to fight you anymore. So he has a lot of power in that. And it's a risk, you know what I mean? But I see them fighting anyways. It's July 10th, right?
Yeah, July 10th.
It should happen. Man, it's an incredible fight. I love this fight. I think it's the fight to make. And Dustin made the right choice.
And think about it too. This is kind of a big fight for Conor in the sense that this is kind of a crossroads fight for him. If he doesn't win this, that's going to be, whatchamacallit, that's going to be 3 losses in his last 4. That's not good. And that Cerrone win is looking even worse and worse as time goes on. We saw Cerrone getting knocked out by Alex Morono in his last fight. So this is a big fight for McGregor, and we'll see sort of what changes he can make in this matchup. So let's start first with the notorious Conor McGregor. He's the A side of this thing. Let's be honest here. I know Poirier's been on a better winning streak. Right now, McGregor 32 years old, 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. Dustin Poirier is 32 years old, 5'9" with a 73-inch reach. So a bit of a reach advantage there for Conor McGregor, just a slight one, but they're the same height and even age-wise they're the same age. So you really are. It's kind of a rare instance where you have 2 fighters that are kind of at the same point in terms of their age and their physicality and everything. So that's what makes this fight even more interesting. And the fact that McGregor won the first fight, Poirier won the second fight. So there's that as well. Now McGregor, we talked about his struggles here. He's lost 2 of his last 3 fights. Granted, 2 of the best in the division. Khabib Nurmagomedov, who last time I checked, has still yet to lose. Got the win over Cerrone and then fought Poirier and lost that fight. Although I think most can argue, and we said this on the live stream, I thought McGregor won that first round. It was just the leg kicks, it proved to be too much, and Poirier was able to capitalize and get the finish there as well. But I think one of the big things with Conor, and we do have to point it out when we're talking about Conor McGregor, is the lack of activity, right? Ever since he won the lightweight title in 2016 over Eddie Alvarez, he's just fought 4 times, and one of those was a boxing fight. So really, he's only competed in MMA 3 times since 2016. It's 2021, John. Like it's that stuff does add up. And the thing is too, it's not like McGregor's doing this at an early stage of his career. He's in his prime years right now. So the fact that he hasn't been competing as much, I think has hurt him. And I think you're seeing other fighters evolve, whereas McGregor, I don't know if we're seeing much of a difference there. I think we're seeing, if anything, I think you could argue that he's regressed a little bit in these fights as well. So that's sort of an interesting thing to this as well. The other part of this that is interesting is the fact that, it's another lightweight fight for Conor, right? There's some thought is, should he be fighting at lightweight? Should he be fighting at welterweight? The Cerrone fight was at welterweight. How much weight is he cutting to get to 155? That's another sort of interesting caveat in here as well. But you can't deny the resume. McGregor's the only guy still to finish Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. I mean, no one's finished Aldo that quickly. He's got to win over Chad Mendes. He's got to win over Eddie Alvarez, which at the time Alvarez had not been finished, at least not recently. So that was a big win as well. McGregor's got a good resume, but the question is, was that just a flash in the pan in terms of that point in his career, or is he legit? We'll sort of find out here. But like I said, this is a pretty crucial fight for his resume overall. When people talk about the greatest fighters of all time, if he loses this fight, I think that takes a big hit here. What do you think of Conor McGregor and his resume and what he's bringing to the table in this trilogy fight?
Man, his career somewhat tanked after he took that boxing fight with Floyd Mayweather, you know what I mean? And the fluctuation in weight too. I think that's a big factor in his fights and his performances. The Eddie Alvarez fight was probably one of the best performances I've ever seen in this sport. You know what I mean? It was just phenomenal. It was flawless. Like his confidence, you know what I mean, in that fight was incredible. But I think after that Floyd fight, his confidence hasn't been the same. Because look who we returned back to. Habib. Like the guy is the greatest lightweight of all time. You know what I mean? Last time I checked. And yeah, he went in there. He went 4 rounds with him. You know what I mean? It's not like he just got finished in the first round. Look at everybody else Habib's fought. I think the latest finish is in his title run, the 3rd round or something like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Just with Conor, he just seems like it's all in his mind. I don't think it's physical. I think it's in his mind. I think his confidence is shot. And you know, he does well, but once he gets into kind of like into a corner pitted, he just can't come back. And we've seen that happen in the past.
The other thing we have to talk about with Conor is his coaching with John Kavanagh. You know, there was some thought that Kavanagh was this, you know, one of the best coaches in the world. But if you think about it, who else has he really, you know, nurtured along the way? Who's he really built up as another fighter from SBG Ireland? I know Johnny Walker loves him. Johnny Walker, I just spoke to him last week on Chris Cyborg's show. He's very happy over there. You know, fans obviously make the joke about Artem Lobov, but if you look at it in general, you look at Gunnar Nelson, he's been struggling. Makwan Amirkhani's been struggling. Like at some point, if this guy is such a great coach, and again, I like Kavanagh. He's, you know, I've interviewed him before. He's a nice guy, but at some point we got to look at, you know, who are you really building up? Who's really, you know, done amazing things? Like you could look at, say, like an Eric Nixick who's worked with Francis or Dan Ige, and you could point to those fighters and say, look, this is the success here. But Kavanagh, outside of McGregor, what has he really done? So there's some question as well as maybe the loyalty to SBG Ireland is somewhat killing McGregor. Maybe he needs to switch things up. I'm very curious to see how he structures this camp, because obviously what he did last time didn't work. He lost, he got finished. And I think part of that was a coaching issue where he wasn't able to adjust to the leg kicks. And, you know, you think about it, let's forget about McGregor Poirier. That matchup was really John Kavanagh against Mike Brown. And Mike Brown won that fight decisively in terms of the strategy and being able to neutralize a lot of McGregor's weapons. So that's another thing to keep in mind here when we're talking about Conor McGregor. Will he do anything different? Like I think, and I said this after the last fight when we talked about this, I think he would be served well by doing a bit of cross-training, having someone else in there that's going to call him out on his bullshit. Like if he's going to show up late or he's going to do this, because right now everyone's on to McGregor and they don't want to, you know, say anything wrong, because let's be honest, a lot of those people are probably on his payroll and they're making good money. Are you really going to tell someone that's giving you a nice paycheck, hey, you shouldn't be doing this? Probably not. I think McGregor needs to get in kind of like almost like a Rocky camp. He needs to be put out of his element and really get back to his roots and remind himself why. And I don't want to get too philosophical here, but, you know, kind of remind him how he got here. He was a guy that did not come from a lot of money. He came from, you know, a tough upbringing, and to see where he is now, you know, it's like that boxing quote. I forget who said it, but it's like, you know, it's really hard to train hard when you're sleeping in silk sheets. It's essentially the same thing with McGregor here, where he's just very comfortable in the environment he's in. What do you think about that? Do you think, you know, some cross training, or, you know, even him going over to the States and he wants to bring Kavanagh, throw in another coach in there, get a Faraz Sahabi or someone else just to give a different look? I think that would be a good strategy for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be a great strategy going into this fight, because if he's going to do that, he needs to do it now. You know, if he does it his next camp, I think it's just going to be too late. I like to see him go to like a Fortis with Saif. I think that guy could probably transform. Look what he did to Uriah Hall. You know what I mean? Like he's transformed Uriah Hall. It was like one of his original fighters. It was a guy that came in and, you know, and he coached him to where he's at right now. I think it would be a good fit for him. A no holds, what do you call it? No nonsense type of coach like him, right?
Yeah.
It would be good for him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So that's everything we know about Conor McGregor. Again, he could be great. It's just he's got to. This is a moment where he can really turn the tide here. Like if he comes out here and finishes Dustin Poirier early on, or he gets an impressive win or a dominant win, that's really going to change the mind of fans right now, because I think a lot of people are uncertain as to what type of Conor McGregor we're getting at this stage in his career. Let's move along to Dustin Poirier right now. Great career resurgence as well. We talked about the height and reach, you know, pretty similar to Conor here, and a nice win streak heading into this one. Back-to-back victories over Dan Hooker and McGregor. Prior to that, loss to Habib. We mentioned it though. Everyone loses to Habib. The fight, I think, of people don't give him, as I just talked like Mario there, the fight of people. I didn't mean to say that. But Max Holloway, that's a huge win. Like I think people sort of gloss over that because Holloway fought at lightweight, but that's still a really good win. Like how many people other than Volkanovski have beat Max Holloway recently? Not many, right? So that's a really good win to have in your resume. Also the win over Alvarez and the win over Gaethje. He's one of the few guys to finish Gaethje as well. the turnaround that Poirier has had, because there was a period, in his career where, I remember when he lost to McGregor, and then it sort of forced his hand to move up to lightweight. And then I even remember when he got knocked out by Michael Johnson, you're like, like this chin's still an issue, but his chin's not an issue. He took a good McGregor shot in that last fight. He ended up, persevering and going through. And I just think the work he's been doing at American Top Team, he is by far one of the best lightweights in the world. And I have no doubt that he could be champion again if he wanted to, assuming that's something he's interested in. But a lot of good fights. The Dan Hooker fight was pretty close. I don't think you can really look at MMA math that way. People are like, well, Chandler knocked out Hooker in the first round. It's a different fight. Like you can't look at two fighters and say they're going to fight that guy the exact same way. The Hooker fight was close, but Poirier still won. And I like the fact that he had to dig deep a little bit and continue to go out there and put on a good fight, with the fact that it was I believe that was a 5-round fight, right? In the Hooker matchup. So that's something, it was. So that, again, having that experience of going 5 rounds, that will pay dividends in a fight like this, which is also going to be a 5-round fight. So that's something to keep in mind as well when it comes to looking at this matchup. But I mean, look at the resume here, John. McGregor, Hooker, Holloway, Alvarez, Gaethje, Pettis. Even Jim Miller, beating him. I know that wasn't the best performance. Diego Ferreira was one of the first guys to hand him a loss. Ferreira, that is. This guy has looked outstanding. Not much more to say. And just a good dude, man. Like you'd be hard pressed to find anyone saying anything bad about Dustin Poirier. So your thoughts on Poirier and what he brings to the table here?
Yeah, when you stack like Poirier's record versus McGregor's record side by side and strip away the titles, you would look at Dustin Poirier's resume and he is a Hall of Fame legend of the division, right? There's no doubt about it, right? Who he's fought, at what point in their career he's fought them and beaten them and finished them. It's just phenomenal. And he's still in his prime, I feel like, Dustin Poirier, man. And I don't know, we could still see the best performances out of him in the future. We just have to find out. But man, when you look at his resume, it's hard to like argue even against like the best guys in that division who they are. I mean, it's incredible.
The thing you gotta look at with Poirier as well is where's the weakness, right? He's got a good ground game. He shored that up, since losing to Korean Zombie. He's really, worked on that. He's at a great camp in that regard. He's fast. He's got good game plans. He follows the game plan. That's another thing we don't talk about enough is, it's one thing to have a coach that's good. It's another thing to follow the game plan. And his chin, I think, is held up. I mean, again, McGregor hit him with a good shot in that first fight, in the rematch, and he survived it and came back. So I think anyone and it's funny, even leading up to the fight, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, McGregor's going to start Poirier in the first round. I don't know, man. It's like you look at the one knockout loss to Michael Johnson, 9 times out of 10, he fights Michael Johnson, he beats him. Let's get real here, okay? I mean, these things happen, right? As Gus Johnson once said in Strikeforce. So I think it's one of those things where you got to look at the fact that there's just not a lot of weaknesses with Poirier. With McGregor now, and I know it's easy to say this now because he lost, but there are some weaknesses. He's been submitted a couple times. There's a cardio issue as well, and the fact that I don't think he's getting the best coaching like you see with Poirier. So there's that as well in terms of what Poirier brings to the table. Okay, I know we're going a little bit early here, but I will give my pick for this fight. I think Poirier gets it done again, and the reason I think that is because I think even though McGregor looked good early on in the rematch, and yes, he has a knockout win over Dustin Poirier in their first fight, but we can almost erase that. It was a featherweight. Poirier wasn't at ATT at the time. They're much different fighters than they were back then. Poirier's been a lot more active. I just think it's the fact that I think Poirier, no matter what is being thrown his way, it's something that his coaches have already covered. And I don't see a situation where, and if you're McGregor, I think you got to realize that, look, you maybe can't take out Poirier early like you did in the first fight. He saw that in the second fight. You've got to think you got to have a backup plan if things go sour. And also you got to look at the fact that Poirier could knock you out again. That's one thing I don't think McGregor expected in that rematch. So I think that's another thing as well. The question is, how does this fight end? I don't think it ends as early as it did last time. This time I'm going to go with kind of the pick that I thought might have happened had Poirier won the rematches. I think we'll see a later finish. I could see maybe a 4th round, maybe even 3rd round finish for Dustin Poirier in this fight, but I think it'll be a submission. I think what'll happen is Poirier will knock McGregor down and maybe not go for the kill there, but maybe go for the ground, get a submission win instead, just because we know that's an area where McGregor's been exploited a few times in terms of having submission losses as well. So I think Poirier goes out there, puts on a great performance, and I think after this, people will be like, where does McGregor go from here? I think he's fine. You've always got the Nate Diaz fight in your back pocket. I don't think Nate's going to beat Leon Edwards. You could do the Masvidal fight. Like, there's fun fights for McGregor going forward. He'll be fine. He'll be just like Chael Sonnen was fine. People are like, I don't remember people being like, oh, Chael Sonnen's career's over after he lost to Anderson the second time. he got a title shot against John Jones. He still had pretty notable fights outside of that. So I think McGregor's going to fall in the same category. Now, could McGregor go out there and change some things up and finish Poirier and do the opposite? Absolutely. But I have yet to see any proof right now, JHK, at the time. I have yet to see any inkling of him changing things up for this camp, and that worries me. And for that reason alone, I have to go Poirier in this fight. Your pick. How do you think this one goes?
The first fight, you got McGregor. He comes in, the best McGregor you'll see, and knocks out Poirier in the first round, I believe. And the second fight was just so exciting, man, until Dustin knocked him out, right? It was a very good fight. Like, even McGregor, I could confidently say that he was maybe winning those rounds, right? Even the first round, you could say that, you could argue that. And then Poirier just turned it on. It's like he flipped the switch and knocked him out with the flurry from hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you think about it, like you said, you see McGregor, I think he's in Abu Dhabi, which means who's he training with at Abu Dhabi? Like, who's there? There's only one gym that all the fighters go to. He hasn't been there. So is he in his private home, yacht, whatever, and he's training by himself? Is he just on the bike? Is he fishing?
He was with some Indian heavyweight. Did you see something he posted about this? Someone I've never heard of. He was with someone over there, but like, let's get real here. Like, why are you not in the States? Why are you not getting the best lightweights around you? Like, granted, I mean, there's some people you just absolutely cannot train with. Like, obviously, he's not going to go to Elevation and train with Gaethje. Fortis might be an option. American Top Team Poirier is there, can't do that. So that kind of eliminates some of the bigger gyms. But why not go to TriStar and train with St. Pierre or something? Like, just to switch it up. I don't know. It's just, and I know we've got COVID restrictions, but it's a little bit concerning. That's all.
Yeah, it is. It is very concerning. And Poirier, he's going to one of the best gyms in the world to train, where they don't take days off. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. When you look at it, Conor, he did look good in the second fight until he got knocked out, and he was phenomenal in the first. So you could say that maybe he might find that spark. But the main thing about the sport is you have to evolve, and that's not what he's doing. Poirier's been evolving. We've seen it in front of our eyes, right? So I feel like Poirier, he's going to get it done again. I feel like they're going to brawl on the feet for a while, though. I think they're going to start trading. I think McGregor's going to eat shots. He's not going to go down as easy, you know what I mean? Because he's not going to punk out. So, but I still see Poirier winning this fight, man. It's just skill for skill, where they're at in their careers. I don't know. It's just, like you said, how many weaknesses does Poirier have? Not many. Only one is Khabib. That's it. You know what I mean? Khabib found the weakness, but the thing is, the skill set don't match. So it's hard to pick McGregor. I'm taking Poirier. You stole my idea. Like, I thought he was gonna go there, hurt him, and then submit him, like get his neck. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I see too. I think he's gonna choke him out.
There you go. Once again, John and I agreeing on something. We tend to disagree every now and then, but this is one of the days where we have to agree. By the way, one more thing I wanted to point out is that initially when that fight was announced, the rematch, I had Poirier. And I'll be honest, and I'll never do this again, but I got convinced out of it by a lot of people saying, you're crazy. How could you think that Poirier was going to win? And the reason I was picking Poirier initially was the activity level. He's been a lot more active, and we've seen the improvements every fight. And you look at like a Holloway fight or whatever, but I got talked out of it, and I regret it. And I'm not going to let people do it to me this time, because we've seen McGregor lose, and he is human, just like any fighter on the planet. People think everyone's invincible. So there's that as well. And I think there's something to be said as well for McGregor, that if you don't put out your opponent early, like a Cerrone or an Alvarez, it tends not to go well for him. Like you just, like even the second Nate Diaz fight, that could have gone either way, and that's Nate Diaz. We're not even talking about a guy that's, say what you want about Nate, but Nate's not an elite fighter. So the fact that you went the distance with him, I think is a little bit concerning. Now, granted, Nate's tough to finish, but you get where I'm going with this, is that I don't know. Like, I think McGregor was I think McGregor was the most dangerous in his career when he was at 145. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he could make 45 and he had that power. And so there's no one even close to his power at 145. He can't make 45 anymore. I mean, you saw the last cut he had to 45. He looked on death's door. Even 55, I think, is a bit of a tough one for him now too. So that's my thoughts. We're both picking Poirier here. We'll see what happens again. But I think right now it's just very concerning to see that he's not really switching things up ahead of this matchup. So there we go.